Fill her up.
You're listening to the Gas Digital Network.
Master of Punk's Tamer of Sages, the king of the ring himself. It's your boy Thicky Smalls, Gerard Michaels in the house. Well done. Handled well.
That's beautiful.
We're live, boys.
Welcome. Now, the Gas Digital audience that came over here, we thank you very much because this is a very special episode. We are not on Gas Digital today. We are live on our YouTube. Try to sneak attack the censors here. It's your boy, Gerard Michaels, the funniest man you never heard of, Thicky Smalls himself. Welcome another beautiful Monday here, Gas Digital people. And to my right, at 6'3", 200 pounds, 210 pounds, and every single one of them is a problem. The master of punks, the tamer of sages, the king of the ring himself, the CEO of the RNC, UFC's favorite, pretty Mickey Gall. What's up, man? How we doing,
what up,
bro?
Big G?
You looking thick, boy.
Thank you, dog.
We about to call this show Thick and Thick, bro.
Yeah.
You looking ready to rock and roll?
Fuck yeah, bro.
Yeah. I'm the man in the mirror.
Killing it at Barwis this morning, throwing the weights around, feeling good. We're joined today by two suited studs here.
Suited studs.
I feel a little bit like a ragamuffin.
Little ragamuffin.
I feel a little like a ragamuffin.
Yeah, we got a little rags to riches a show here today. We've got friend of the program, second time on, hands together for none other than Sal Greco. Did nothing wrong. Sal Greco, what's happening, man?
Sally G.
I'm happy to be here once again, and you're 6'3". We could have actually used you in the John Gotti versus Floyd Mayweather fight.
Yeah, man, I saw that thing. You were there?
Yes, I was there. It was quite a spectacle at the very end.
We'll get into that.
John's my boy.
I know. We'll get into that in a little bit because there was some maybe fishy, odd things that had happened there.
Little fugazi.
And somebody that may know something or other about fishy, odd things once or twice throughout the history of America, maybe the most well-known political insider of all time. The man, the myth, the legend, Roger Stone. Roger Stone here with us today.
Delighted to be with you, but then, when the feds want to put you away for 7 to 9, you're delighted to be anywhere.
7 to 9. The feds are trying. The feds already got you once, man. Right?
Well, except for I was pardoned. I had an unconditional pardon because I was put through a Soviet-style show trial. A kangaroo court where they deny you any reasonable defense. But then almost a year later, a federal judge orders Robert Mueller to release his final report, and it says right there in black and white, we could find no factual evidence that Roger Stone engaged in Russian collusion, WikiLeaks collaborations, or any other crime. So the whole thing was a fugazi. It was a fraud. As you know, it was meant to pressure me to testify falsely against Donald Trump. In other words, when they couldn't find any Russian collusion, they decided to go invent some. Let's just pressure Stone to say that these 29 cell phone calls he had with Trump in 2016, that all had to do with the Russians. The problem is, I already passed 2 lie detector tests on that subject. It was a lie. I refused to lie. Now, through the grace of God and the strength of Donald J. Trump, I'm on this podcast and glad to be here.
Yeah, and they should know better than to try to bleed a stone, that's for sure. Now, Mr. Roger Stone, 2 things off the top of the bat. Let's get it out there in the open. Are you, in fact, a Russian spy?
Not only am I not a Russian spy, I don't know any Russians. I haven't been to Russia. Actually, it's not true. They did run this guy who called himself Hank Greenberg in on me in 2016.
The baseball player?
No, but he was using that name, and he insisted on meeting in Sunny Isles, which is an enclave of the Russian community here in Florida. And one of my good friends, Michael Caputo, is a good guy, kept saying, this guy says he has dirt on Hillary Clinton. You ought to meet with him and vet him, see if there's anything there. So I go to this meeting.
R.I.P. that guy.
And he's clearly on the down low. He's wearing a Trump hat, a Trump T-shirt. This is not how intelligence agents operate, generally speaking. And he says, I have all this dirt, all these emails on Hillary Clinton. And I said, well, I'd have to see them to determine whether they have any value. He says, that's going to cost you $2 million.
$2 million?
I said, the joke's on you. I don't have $2 million, and if I did have it, this is not the way I would spend it. Guy says, you don't understand. It's not your money I want. It's Donald Trump's money. I said, no, you don't understand. Donald Trump isn't spending $2 million on anything, never mind opposition research. So, my friend, this meeting's over. And I left. I'd totally forgotten this meeting. Now, I didn't know he was a Russian national at the time, but only later did I find out he's an FBI informant who's only in the country since he murdered some guy back in Russia on a visa signed off on by the FBI station head down in Miami. So the only Russian I've ever met was an FBI informant they tried to run in on me. By the way, in the Mueller report, this is reduced to one sentence. Stone met with a man who called himself Hank Greenberg. We determined he was not a Russian government asset. They didn't mention that he was an FBI informant. Unbelievable.
An FBI informant and ex-Russia hitman.
Yes.
It's like a movie.
Yeah. And he's still, by the way, somewhere in South Florida, so I hope he doesn't see this podcast.
Well,
Sounds like a good guy.
Millions of people do, so I'm sure Hank will.
Maybe I stopped this guy in Brighton Beach because that was a big enclave of Russian community.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Never
Well,
know.
a little Sheepshead Bay
my
action.
7.5 years in Coney Island as a cop,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. How tough to see those guys out there. They were really hiding, weren't they, out there in Brighton Beach?
all
Sheepshead
over.
Bay.
Tatiana's restaurant.
I'll tell you what, though, they gave the Italians a run for the money with the gumas, the women they had parading around out
Yes,
there, roller roasted at 2 o'clock in the morning.
They
That
did.
is true.
I think they were dealing at the time in the 80s with Anthony Gaspipe, if you remember that name.
Oh, yeah,
Gaspipe.
I remember he
Yeah.
Casso.
Yeah.
They were dealing with him back in the day.
We talked about him a lot when I did the Mafia States. He was Franzizi's guy.
Francisi, who now I hope he's watching because I understand he's a big fan of this man right here.
He's a friend of mine, actually.
Michael Franzese, good guy, friend of the podcast. Now that our guy Chaz Palminteri, our kind of mentor in the business here, is hooked up with him on a show. All good things happen with good people. I feel like the culture's starting to turn a little
Well,
bit.
Franchisi and I have something in common. We both found Jesus, and it's sincere. I mean, look, there's no question that these guys wanted to send me to a dank Georgia prison where I was supposed to die. I'm 68 years old, lifetime history of asthma. The Bureau of Prisons insists that there are no known cases of COVID at this prison in Georgia. The woman who's African American, head of the prison guards union in Georgia, reads this, contacts one of my lawyers, and says there's 200 cases here that they're hiding, and there's going to be more. So the whole idea was to pack me off to prison. That way, once I died, I could not pursue an appeal because my appeal would have exposed everything. So it is only through my prayers to Jesus Christ, who gave Donald Trump the strength and the courage in an election year to give me a commutation of my sentence. And then many people don't know this, a full unconditional presidential pardon. Go online and look for my pardon. See if you can find it. You won't find it. Google has buried it as if it never happened.
Now, Roger, for our fans, specifically our meathead fans who might not be very political, could you tell us a little bit about yourself? I watched your Netflix documentary. I loved it. I'm a big fan.
Get Me Roger Stone. The problem is Robert Mueller saw it, but he's so senile he thought the name of it was Get Roger Stone.
Yeah.
And he certainly tried. For those who don't know me, I'm half Sicilian. I'm Italian from the waist down.
Hear that?
And I have worked for 4 American presidents. I am a veteran of 12 Republican presidential campaigns. I cut my teeth with Richard Nixon. I have a tattoo of Richard Nixon on my back.
Yeah.
About the size of a grapefruit floating between my shoulders, meaning I'm the only guy in the world with a dick on the front and the back. And it's not. It really is not a political statement. It really isn't. Nixon was a pragmatist. You know, he had conservative views on some issues. He had more progressive views on other issues. But to me, it's a daily reminder that when you look in the mirror and you see it, that in life, when you get knocked down, when you suffer some defeats, when you don't get what you want, when you really strive and you fall short, instead of giving up, you got to dust yourself off, get up, and get back in the fight. That's
a great message.
That's the story of Nixon. The guy, they counted this guy out so many times, and he just kept coming back. He would not be defeated. Even when they tried to impeach him and he resigned, he still comes back and publishes 5 New York Times bestsellers and becomes a foreign policy advisor to both George H.W. Bush and Bill Clinton. I met Bill Clinton once and only once, and that was at Nixon's funeral. We're in the receiving line, and Clinton's a real pro. I mean, the guy's unbelievable. So it's my turn. I say, Mr. President, I'm Roger Stone. Oh, yes, I know who you are. Now he doesn't let go of your hand. He holds on to it. He looks you right in the eye, and he says, I know how hard you worked to get President Nixon and I together. I know for a long time my staff blocked it, but I just want you to know that in the end, we not only became good friends, but I really came to rely on his wise counsel when it came to China, Russia, international affairs. And I just want you to know how much I appreciate that. I said, thank you very much, Mr. President.
Wow.
Clinton then turns to Hillary and says, Hillary, you know Roger Stone. I put out my hand. She won't shake it. And she says, yes, I know him. And I moved on down the line.
Wow.
Wow, I'm starting to get the feeling Hillary Clinton might be a little cold.
You think?
I think she might be a little. She might be a little cold and maybe holds grudges.
I don't know. The smell of sulfur was kind of in the air. Alex Jones isn't necessarily wrong about that.
Alex Jones isn't necessarily wrong. That's like
Could be a T-shirt.
Yeah,
that should be a T-shirt. Yeah. Turns out the frog's kind of gay.
Yeah, even Robert F. Kennedy's now admitting it. That stuff they put in the water could.
I have so much to get into you on that. I want to talk about that so much. But Sal, I don't want you to be forgotten here. Do you have any updates on your case? You know, for people that don't know, that haven't watched the previous episode, Sal was railroaded by the New York City, allegedly railroaded by the New York City Police Department for his affiliation with Mr. Stone here, and he is now you are engaged in a civil suit against the city to try to recoup and some of your pension that was taken away from you, which you claim unjustly.
All right, well, right now we're in a second motion to dismiss. The city filed a second motion to dismiss. Considering my second amended complaint at the time you heard of, obviously they terminated me stating that I am friends with Roger Stone, therefore I must be terminated because I violated this draconian rule that says you cannot knowingly associate with someone who is reasonably believed to have engaged or engaged in criminal activity. 70% of America has a record. So my argument would be Cardi B, who was invited to the police academy, no, there wasn't a court order for that. She was invited to the police academy. She has a record. She's a known gangbanger, and she's also
I believe the term is stripper.
Could be a stripper.
Okay.
But she makes videos.
A little bit of column A, a little bit of column B.
But she makes.
If you can afford it, you can make anything happen. Really,
She makes songs in which she advocates the murder of police officers. So let's invite her to the police academy to speak. I mean, this is really simple. Eric Adams, as a police captain, the current New York mayor, consorts with Louis Farrakhan, consorts with Mike Tyson, both convicted felons. He absolutely is the one who invited Cardi B to visit the New York Police Academy in violation of their own Fugazi rule. But he gets fired, can't find work because he doesn't have clearance. He doesn't have a good fellow letter. He doesn't have a character reference. And they take away his pension. Eric Adams is going to be on the stand very soon to testify about these things. And, oh, by the way, Eric, what about those felons you had dinner with last week? There can only be one standard. Everybody has to be treated equal. So they can't fire him for being a friend of mine when Eric Adams is allowed to consort, as with the entire brass of the NYPD, with people who are indeed convicted in ongoing criminals.
Yeah, I mean,
one standard.
This podcast, we've had bank robbers, porn stars, a couple priests,
a preacher,
former gangsters,
a preacher, former gangsters, current gangsters. Yeah, we enjoy a diverse opinion of thought from all walks of life.
I would lose a lot of friends if I couldn't associate with someone convicted.
Also,
of anything,
if you grew up where we grew up, if you grew up in the Brooklyn, New York, Jersey area, I hate to tell you, you have consorted at one time or another
with somebody who has a record.
The vast majority of whom are, let's face it, legitimate businessmen.
But listen to this one.
And by the way, it needs to be said, Mike Tyson, you are invited here whenever you want.
I have nothing against Mike Tyson. All I'm saying is if you're going to use this one standard, then you have to use it across the board. Mm-hmm. If Eric Adams can consort with people who fall under this, and by the way, he was charged, they investigated him under the same exact rule as him. They docked his vacation 5 days. Him, they took away a 14-year pension. This guy has 14 years of unblemished service, and believe me, they assigned him to the worst, most dangerous precincts in the graveyard shift in New York City. Guy doesn't have a single civilian complaint against him, not one, but he holds the record for arrests for people for DUI. But they fire him because he's a friend of mine. They fire him because he comes down to Easter and visits me and my family. By the way, we met on Instagram, which shows you that Instagram's not all bad, even though I'm banned for life.
It's true.
Yeah, I think what you said kind of is perfect. It should be one standard.
Right.
It shouldn't be this hypocritical, like selective,
but
where some guys can do this and some guys can't.
So
I mean,
I'll give you a
it's
better
crazy.
example. Joe Biden can keep as many documents as he wants, and nobody's trying to remove him. But Donald Trump kept documents which, under the Presidential Documents Act, he's entitled to hold on to. But oh no, we want to throw him into jail for 400 years. Please give me a break.
That's definitely a fugazi. But there's actually more to the story. Very recently, the police commissioner, who is on my lawsuit, by the way, she will be deposed as well.
She just resigned.
Resigned,
Resigned.
okay. So now the incoming police commissioner would be the first deputy commissioner. His name is Edwin Caban. He has 30 years in the NYPD. His brother, James, was once a New York City police officer in the late 90s. He was a sergeant. He handcuffed a cab driver, beat him senseless. He was charged criminally with this, by the way. He was terminated off the job. It was a hung jury. A few years later, Mr. Caban is known as the slumlord of the Bronx. He was thrown in jail for that, in fact. So he was in jail. He's a convicted criminal. So now, a couple of weeks ago, guess who's in the picture with Mr. Caban and his brother Edwin Caban, who's now the first deputy commissioner? Eric Adams. So Eric Adams
Is associating with people who have known to have committed crimes. Why isn't he being held to the same standard as Salvatore Greco?
and he is about to appoint Mr. Caban as acting police commissioner. So that would be the second police commissioner Mr. Eric Adams has not terminated for allowing this fugazi rule of hanging out with people with a record. Eric, you're breaking your own rules. You're letting the rules be broken. You must be held accountable for this, Eric. You will be on the stand. Believe me, you will be added to this lawsuit. It's coming. We just got to get past the second motion to dismiss, and then my lawyer cannot wait to have you on the stand answering this, because from all accounts right now, he is really the de facto police commissioner. It's him and a couple of cronies, Philip Banks, Edwin Caban, this guy named Madry, who's in another lawsuit with my lawyer. He was in a sexual harassment case with another officer when he was a chief of patrol or something. The entire administration is full of scandals, including Eric Adams. And all we're saying here is needs to be one standard. One rule, Eric. Can't be one rule for Eric and another rule for everyone else, as he stated to the New York Post a couple of months ago.
Listen, so I like you as a person, and I'm very, much anti-authoritarian and anti-government, so I'm inclined to believe you. But, we can't just have 10 minutes of propaganda here. So what happened in your case? Where did you go wrong, and what did they actually pin you for?
They were trying to originally.
You were January 6th, correct?
No, it was not.
He was not a January
He was.
6th.
It was in my hotel room on January 6th, where we never left the hotel grounds.
Never left the hotel, and you were in D.C.
I gave a speech on January 5th at a legally permitted event. I stand by every word of that speech. You should be able to go see it on YouTube, but they took it down.
Go figure.
But if you went looking, you could find it. Neither one of us ever left the hotel that day, and we don't know anything regarding anything that happened at the Capitol or any other illegal action that day. No, this is really simple. They terminated him because he is a friend of mine. Because under their regulation, you can't be associated with someone who may have or may in the future be involved in crime. Well, that would include Cardi B, would it not? Mm-hmm. That would include Caban, the guy's brother. So there can only be one standard. I think he wins in court. I think he wins relatively soon.
Now, we're seeing this a lot. The idea of, selectively applicable law. Arbitrarily enforcement of the law, especially on a political scale. You haven't been in politics really since the 60s, early 60s.
Late 60s.
Late 60s. Has it ever been this bad before?
No, it really hasn't. So there was a time, believe it or not, in America when both parties were patriotic. Both parties believed in free enterprise. Both parties believed in capitalism. Both parties were anti-communist. The Democrats wanted to spend a little more and tax a little more. The Republicans wanted to spend a little more, less, tax a little less. But both parties were essentially solid. John F. Kennedy, strong anti-communist, wanted a silverback dollar, favored a massive national defense buildup. Deeply distrusted the intelligence agencies because they lied to him about the Bay of Pigs invasion. They lied to him about the Cuban Missile Crisis. He actually threatened to smash them into a million pieces and scatter them to the wind. That's why he was murdered.
The CIA, right?
Correct.
He said that about, yeah.
Correct.
And that's after a Republican president Eisenhower warned him incoming to watch
Right.
out for
Watch
him as
for
well.
them. Watch
so
out.
this is back to back post World War II.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
So no, it was not always like this. I was a political strategist and consultant for 30 years. I lived in Washington, D.C. I had a lot of friends who were Democrats. We drank together. We ate together. We teased each other. Sometimes they beat us. Sometimes we beat them. When they beat us, we said, "I'll get you next time." When we beat them, they said, "We'll get you next time." Now, however, they want to send you to prison. They want to bankrupt your family, want to destroy your family. They want to destroy you. This is a new development. It was not always like this, but then we've never had this unprecedented situation in which all three branches of government, including the judicial branch, which is supposed to be impartial, have now been completely and totally politicized. It's
Sure.
all politics. It's all corrupt.
And this is not just you who said this. When we interviewed Rudy Giuliani, he said essentially the same thing. He said he doesn't know exactly when it happened, but him and Cuomo were good friends. They were very friendly. Their family was friendly, and Cuomo was the governor of New York. He was a Democrat, and Rudy was the mayor of New York, Republican. And he said somewhere along the line it switched. You used to have to try to win the center, and then you'd win from the center out. And now he says the only way to win is from the extremes in. And that's whenever that switch happened is when he thinks.
Look, that's true. Look, Andrew Cuomo's a friend of mine. Chris Cuomo's a friend of mine. I've known these guys for a long time. They won't admit it, but even they know it was not always like this. But when a federal judge on their last day in office can order your attorneys to testify against their client and turn over all their notes and go before the grand jury, then that's a broken system. Either the Sixth Amendment of the Constitution exists or it does not exist. It can't just exist for some people. There are 6 different investigations into the Clinton Foundation, which is a cash and carry operation. You just pay huge money for governmental decisions. All 6 investigations get killed by the FBI. Yet we now know the FBI.
Literally, or?
Yeah, this is reported last week.
Yep.
Just killed, just closed. No investigation. Yet we now know, without any question, that the FBI and Bill Barr was well aware of the fact that there was documentation that Hunter and Joe both took $5 million bribes from this Ukrainian oil company. They did nothing about it.
Who you said? Bill Barr.
Bill Barr.
Who's Bill Barr?
Bill Barr was the former Attorney General of the United States.
Okay.
He works out at the same gym as Chris Christie.
Okay.
Shopped at the same store too.
So that
I can picture him now.
the Trump administration doesn't like Bill Barr, but he was there for a long time with them. So
He was appointed Attorney General. He was a Bush guy. In his defense, he was very swift to grab the Mueller report, look at it, and say there's nothing here, and declare that, which really aggravated those manipulating Mueller. That's why they let Mueller. They took a gamble. So let's let him testify before Congress. Maybe he can breathe life back into his report. The guy testified. He turns out to be clearly an Alzheimer's patient. Fusion GPS, I've never heard of that. Oh, the prosecutor who worked for me, directly under me, she gave money to Hillary Clinton. She represented Hillary at previous as lawyer. I didn't know that. You knew that. You're either crazy or you're a liar. One or the other.
Well, so this is and I'm a guy that voted for Trump. So the idea, the second time I didn't vote for him the first time. The first time I went third party. The idea that these people were bad isn't a good argument for Trump because he hired these people and didn't fire these people. It's a self-defeating argument in my mind. This idea that Fauci was able to make it all 4 years of Trump, and Donald Trump still, in my estimation, as of last I read about it, is still proud of Operation Warp Speed and the vaccine. To me, that's not a winning argument. That's not the way he should be presented.
Tell me who has a better record
Then who?
than that in the Republican Party. Who has a better record? Nobody.
Yeah, that's
So
fine.
I agree with you. By the way, I'm unvaccinated.
Yeah.
I would not urge anybody to have the vaccination.
To use your Chris Christie, argument, it's like, okay, who's the prettiest girl at fat camp? Who gives a shit?
Well,
you're talking about a party that lost to John Fetterman. This is a broken party.
Yeah, but in this case, look, Chris Christie.
John Fetterman can't put two sentences
Chris
together.
Christie's brothers jammed up on an insider trading deal. Christie gives a very lucrative conservatorship to a U.S. attorney, so his brother takes a walk. I'm sorry. Chris and his brother belong in prison, and if Trump gets back in, they'll probably end up there. Sorry.
Well, again, so
And if you really believe you knew nothing about the George Washington Bridge, I got a bridge I want to sell you because he did it. We know he did it.
Yes.
Christopher Wray put his cell phone into a safe, so they never looked at it. Chris Christie, if you're watching, you did the George Washington Bridge thing. Everyone knows it. You may have skated on that one. You won't skate on your next crime.
Yeah, the biggest crime Chris Christie had is the softball uniform. We all agree.
That
with
was
that.
that
was.
I thought
that's
what-
some serious
that
Camel
picture
Toe
on the
action
beach.
right
As
there.
a
What about the
large-
beach picture?
Yeah.
That's-
After he told everybody to get the fuck off the beach too. It was-
Just to be clear, the night the FBI stormed my home and 29 FBI agents show up at 6 o'clock in the morning to arrest me for the first time.
Did you have a belt buckle on you?
No, if they would have grabbed me even worse.
It's a belt buckle. It's legal.
Yeah.
Belt buckle, paperweight.
But the point, of course, is they know I have no valid passport. They know I have no firearms in the car. You're a flight risk? Really? Everybody knows what I look like, thanks to CNN. Chris Christie's on TV that night saying that I'm guilty. Sorry, Chris, you're the one who's guilty, and you're going to prison, even if it's my last breath.
So what did you advise? And I know that look, you've been Donald Trump's right hand man for a really long time. You guys, you come and you go in the organization. But you had to at some point tell him, look, man, get this guy Fauci out of here, dude. What are you doing?
I never disclosed the content of my private conversations with the president. You know why? Because that will be the end of them. That's why. But my views are known, and I think you can assume that I probably expressed my views. He's not going to change his position. All I argue is that in his first term, while I think he did a lot of great things, he learned a lot about how Washington works. He wasn't a politician. He showed up in town thinking, okay, I get this. There are two teams, the Republicans, the Democrats. The Republicans will all rally around me the way they did around Reagan, the last outsider we had as president. The Democrats will oppose me. That's the way it works. He never understood that half the Republicans, maybe
a
more,
uniparty type of a deal?
Yeah, we're trying to get rid of him from the beginning. So now I would argue that he has a much better idea who the bad guys are. And I think he'd be much better in a second term. There is no other Republican who can win the next election because I believe that there's a subset of voters out there who are definitely not Republicans. They don't like Republicans. To them, the Republicans represent the country club. They're Trump voters. They won't vote for Ron DeSantis. They won't vote for any of these other Republican candidates. They might vote for Robert Kennedy Jr. if he could figure out some way to get nominated, which I think will be extraordinarily difficult. Because I think, unfortunately, as much as I like him, and I disagree with him on a lot of stuff, but I like him a lot on some issues, they're going to kneecap him the way they kneecap Bernie Sanders. But some of these folks might vote for him if he could get to the general, but I don't see that happening. That's why I believe Trump is the only one who can win. These voters don't go for anyone else. They just don't vote. By the way, these are the voters that Mitt Romney couldn't get. These are the voters John McCain couldn't get. There's only one man who can get them, Donald Trump.
Are you saying RFK could get the nomination if he was a Republican?
No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is he's chosen to run as a Democrat, and they've already rigged the rules against him. I mean, okay, he's going to go in the New Hampshire primary and the Iowa caucuses. That's great, but those states have been stripped of their delegates. So they're beauty contests.
They're doing what they did to Tulsi Gabbard too.
I'd love for him to be Trump's vice.
I was first mentioned right here.
I was actually the first guy to say that. Steve Bannon, who's a piece of work,
Who rips off everything Roger says and
he
does.
came out and put forward the idea. But there's a number of problems with it. First of all, you have what are called sore loser laws, which means if you ran were on the ballot in a state for the nomination, you can't then appear on the ballot that November as a nominee of another party or as an independent.
Gotcha.
Although you could argue, I didn't run for vice president, I ran for president, therefore the sore loser law.
You can see both sides of that because then you don't want to play spoiler against the person that beat
Great
you.
minds think alike, you know what I'm saying?
But then beyond that, there are a number of states that specifically say that you can't appear on the ballot in that state as a Republican nominee for federal office unless you are a registered member of that party. And Robert Kennedy is not. So I think, unfortunately, I would also love to see a Trump-Kennedy ticket, but all Trump has to do is pledge, if I'm elected, I'm going to make this guy Attorney General. If I'm elected, I'm going to make him the head of HHS. And interestingly enough, when Robert Kennedy was on with Laura Ingraham, a great interview, by the way, she asks him, will you endorse Joe Biden if he defeats you for the Democratic nomination? He completely ducks the question. Well, I'd have to think about that. It's unlikely, but I'd have to think about that.
You just presented a change I'd really like to see before you go forward. The idea that presidents should tell us who their potential cabinet is. We should be voting for the whole team. Because you've been in this a long time. President Bush might have been a fine president. As soon as Cheney and Rumsfeld got involved, there's just no way.
Well, it's that whole situation is a bit more complicated. Here's the thing: by law, you cannot promise to appoint someone, so you'd have to say, for Attorney General, I want someone like Robert Kennedy Jr.
Oh, you have to couch it.
Right, in order for it to be legal. Otherwise, it's an inducement and it's illegal. But to go back to the other question, I think it is. I think that a bipartisan unity approach is the only thing that can save the country. I like what Robert Kennedy's doing. Now, that will be used against him. I know him. We're not close friends. I would call him an acquaintance. I met him once in my life. But they take that picture, the Biden opposition research people take that picture, and they put it all over Twitter. Stone urged Robert Kennedy to run. No, I didn't.
Opposition.
No, I didn't.
They're going to take your endorsement as
Stone
controlled
is
opposition.
advising Robert Kennedy. No, I'm not. I'm covering it on my daily show at stonezone.live every day because it's interesting. Because I find what the guy doing interesting.
That's a pro plug right there.
That's what it was.
That's a pro
See
plug.
how we slid that in?
Stone Zone.
Pro. That's that. I got to take notes on that. That was so well done.
In case you didn't catch it, it's StoneZone.live. Every day at 5.
StoneZone.live.
Yeah.
Why do you think a third party can't get any traction in this?
It's very simple, because the law that governs how to get on the ballot in the 50 states are written by Republicans and Democrats working together. So if you've got a spare $60 million, I could get another party on the ticket because that's what it's going to cost you. And then the Presidential Commission on Debates, which is not appointed by the president, is not a commission, is most definitely not a debate, is controlled by Republicans and Democrats. So I didn't support Mitt Romney in 2012. I voted for Gary Johnson. I openly supported and campaigned for Gary Johnson, who's a very good friend of mine, a very good guy. But he should have been on the ballot. He should have been on the debate stage. So they set an artificial floor. Oh, well, you can't be on the debate stage until you're getting 15% in the polls. So the guy breaks 15%. You know what happens? They change the criteria to 20 because they're never going to let you on that debate.
Legal cheating.
That's what it is right now. It's 20% to get on the debate stage.
They can change it with one meeting, and they will. Okay. Here's what the criteria should be. If your candidacy is on the ballot in enough states to theoretically hit 270 electoral votes and therefore be elected, you should be on the debate stage. I don't care if you're in the Green Party, the Libertarian Party. If you're on the ballot in enough states to theoretically be elected, you should be in the debates. But the Presidential Commission on Debates, the co-chairs of which are the Republican National Chairman and the Democratic National Chairman, they don't want debate. There was a poll.
They're actually actively saying that now.
Right, they don't.
The only way to save democracy is to not debate.
Right.
Can't have anybody knowing what we're doing here.
Meanwhile, the climate is so polarizing between like the two main parties.
It's only getting worse. It's like all the money comes from the crazy or the greedy. There's no money in the middle.
Now this actually, if I remember the third party thing it's in New York. Remember in New York you had the problem with the third party not being allowed to even represent themselves in races, right?
And New York has a unique situation with there are multiple parties. You have the Republican Party, the Democrat Party, obviously, the Conservative Party, the Working Families Party. You used to have the Liberal Party, but in order to maintain your status, you have to get at least 50,000 votes in each gubernatorial year, and if you don't, you lose your permanent status. But you win the cumulative vote total. So Donald Trump appears as the nominee of the Republican and Conservative Party. You add the vote total together to determine who carries the state.
Oh, interesting.
It's a unique situation. Andrew Cuomo tried to kill it because the Working Family Party, which is a bunch of crazy leftists, never liked him because Andrew Cuomo's not a liberal. Andrew Cuomo's a gangster who believes in nothing whatsoever other than getting elected. And they hated him because he's not a liberal. He's not a progressive. He's a moderate Democrat at best. He was very late coming to same-sex marriage, a mainstay of their party. He was very late coming to legalization of cannabis, a mainstay of their party. They hate Andrew Cuomo. So the irony is Andrew Cuomo wasn't taken down by conservatives. Andrew Cuomo
he's
was taken down by
the left,
liberals.
yeah.
The left took him down.
That's one of the things that I think has been very interesting since the second Obama campaign, Obama's reelection campaign. It's almost like the Democrats, unleashed a golem among themselves, where they had to get that far left coalition to get over the hump. But now it's the far left coalition, the Justice Democrats and the far left progressives, who are eating Democrats. It's not Republicans who are beating Democrats in heavy left areas. Like AOC didn't beat a Republican.
Well, and they clearly have control of Joe Biden, or at least Joe Biden's apparatus. I mean, I have friends of mine who are Democrats who don't like Trump, and they're saying, "Look, Biden's a moderate. He's gonna govern from the center. Really, where? He's not governing from the center at all. If he even knows what day of the week it is."
That's true.
I mean, you talked about Kennedy. A Democrat like Joe Manchin wasn't an outlier when I was younger. Bill Clinton was a moderate. Bill Clinton would almost be seen as right wing today.
If John Kennedy were alive today, he'd be a Republican based on the record that I outlined earlier. So, no, the whole idea of the old Democratic Party, the party of Truman, the party of Kennedy, the party of Bill Clinton, not Hillary, the party of Bill, that party no longer exists. Their party's been taken over by radical socialists.
Is so it comes down to money. Where's this money coming from, right? It seems to me that global interests have infiltrated domestic politics. The money's coming from global interest. Is the threat of the World Economic Forum, the WHO, are these things actual real threats, or are they overblown in your mind?
I think they're real threats because they back them up with money. Look, George Soros has financed people who go on Twitter.
And now Alex Soros.
And Alex Soros, although I think it was always him, by the way, and advocating the assassination of Donald Trump. There's a crime. Mr. Barr, go pick these people up. What are you waiting for? But there is no equal application of the law. So they pretty much do whatever they want with impunity. The system is awash with dirty money, soft money, money that never gets reported anyplace. And that is who's financed to take over the Democratic Party.
It would be real interesting if they were investigating Biden the same way they were investigating Trump.
Well, the House Republicans are trying to do that, but those who keep hounding and screaming about the rule of law don't seem to have any problem with the FBI stonewalling a legitimate congressional request for documents and testimony from the FBI regarding what they've had on Joe Biden and his illegal acceptance of bribes for several years. There is every time you see a Democrat on TV speak about the rule of law, you know they're lying.
And for people that don't know, that aren't as familiar, some of our fans are here for sport
about
or
the
comedy.
Trump thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I for one, I'm not very familiar with the allegations he's facing. So if you could explain
the Fugazi allegations.
I'm sure that's how at least they're going to be presented.
It's relatively simple. What they're claiming is that he held on to certain presidential records that he was required to return to the government. I just said it right there. Under the Presidential Records Act, he's entitled to do that. Judge Amy Berman Jackson, who was the judge in my case, who's a Trump hater, she ruled that Bill Clinton could hold on to any document he wants as a former president. That is the controlling law. That is the legal precedent. Jack Smith, who says with a straight face there's equal protection under the law and everybody's treated equal, which is an absurdity, has brought these charges under the Espionage Act of 1917, which there's been no prosecution.
Sounds a lot like yours, where it's the arbitrary,
equal protection. Yeah, right, Jack. Look at me. Look at my case.
And now, because the Supreme Court has ruled that a case has to be tried in the jurisdiction where the alleged crime took place, they're apoplectic that this is not going to go to trial in Washington, D.C., where all the judges are controlled.
They got to play a road game.
But they've now got to go in front of a judge in Miami who's not in the tank. Yeah, she was appointed by Donald Trump. No, she should not recuse herself. There's no grounds to do so. You had no problem with a judge who was appointed by Barack Obama trying me. You didn't scream for her recusal. I moved that she recuse herself several times. She rejected it. Would have been an issue for appeal had I gotten to appeal.
But that in of itself, while I agree with you from a perspective of being pragmatic, that pains me from a perspective of being a realist as for what that means for our country. What it means for our country is like we are at a tit for tat place now, where because you did it doesn't mean I should do it. It's so petty, and it's to me it's like it's creating a cultural death spiral that we can't get out of.
I think you're really, really seriously understating the problem. The law doesn't matter. The Constitution doesn't matter. The rules don't matter. We do whatever we want, and there's nothing you can do about it. When they can make Trump own lawyers testify against him and turn over their notes from their conversations with him, that is proof the Constitution doesn't matter, the law doesn't matter, the rules don't matter.
Sure.
They just do whatever they want.
So
and
now
until you can find a federal judge who will stop them, they will not be stopped. That's why they're apoplectic, that you have a judge here who's an independent that they cannot control.
I've been in numerous cases. I've never heard of anything like this. To have a lawyer, your personal attorney, testify against you being forced to. This is unheard of. And as I've heard yesterday on the Roger Stone show on WABC Radio at 3 p.m. on Sundays, David Schoen.
Not as good as a plug, but it was a
Stone Zone
little.
I was going to get it in anyway.
This is the Roger Stone show on WABC Radio at 3 p.m. on Sundays.
You got to smooth the edges a little bit there on him. The boy's coming along good.
It's coming along well.
It's coming along good.
Yeah.
He had a great guest. It was David
He
Schoen.
only recently got shoes on him. So.
Listen, David. So he had David Schoen on. David Schoen, who was an attorney for Roger on his case, and he's been Donald Trump's impeachment lawyer, one of his lawyers. He stated something. This is insane. So he was saying that the grand jury, the testimony of grand jury, that certain people that testified in Washington, D.C., we don't know if in the Florida grand jury they heard any of this testimony.
So in other words, they just read them the testimony.
Sure.
So in other words, the grand jury has no chance to cross-examine that
Totally get
person
it.
or even see them or read whether they think they're credible because of the way they act in court. It's a travesty.
What really listen, and this is to me the great appeal of Trump is, he the infighting, I don't like it. The name calling, I don't like it. The bluster, fine, is what it is.
Geez, those are all things I do like.
I know. I was going to say, you're talking to the man behind that.
The
right?
WWE aspect of things.
Yeah.
Come on.
I don't.
The show.
I don't like. I don't like the leader of the free world setting up a super kick from the turnbuckle. Whatever. But the idea that he was going to take on the military-industrial complex, the idea that he didn't start wars, the idea that he was, going after the swamp, trying to drain the swamp, was remarkably important to me, and that's why I supported him. I hear these things, and I agree with everything you guys are saying, and then I say, man, why didn't Donald Trump pardon Julian Assange? Why is Snowden
Jared
still
Kushner.
Jared Kushner had
Jared Kushner and to a much lesser degree, Mike Pompeo. Mr. President, are you aware of the fact that the disclosures by Julian Assange caused the death of thousands of American soldiers and sailors? Were you aware of that? Now, that's a lie, but that's what he told Trump.
Listen, the truth shall set you free. We are in a timeline in America right now where breaking the law doesn't get you in trouble. Reporting on somebody breaking the law does. Edward Snowden.
That's a great point, G.
Edward Snowden, he was like Sisyphus giving fire to.
They should both have been pardoned. Both he and Assange have been pardoned. But
all he did is show what the CIA and the deep state was doing to its own citizens.
And while we're at it, Trump had the opportunity to declassify all of the JFK assassination records, and he released about 80% of them. But Mike Pompeo, public enemy number one, deep state quisling,
Fugazi,
a fraud, he convinced Trump that would expose our sources and methods. I'm sorry, Mike. Nobody involved in the Kennedy assassination is still alive. And if you guys are plotting to kill an American president, we actually need to know that. We need to know your sources. Trump on my radio show last Sunday pledged that if he's elected again, he will release all those documents. It's about time.
We never got to the bottom of the bricks. Who set up the pallets of bricks on the riots?
Oh, I remember that one. That was in New York City.
We never got to the bottom of who financed the riots. These were well-organized, well-financed things.
Somebody paid for those flatbeds.
Somebody paid for the flatbeds.
That's right.
Somebody set up the pipe bombs January 6th that were inert. Somebody.
It's on camera, but nobody knows
139 flights to Epstein Island, and we don't know anybody that was on it except Donald Trump and Bill Clinton. So where are the answers?
Hold on. Donald Trump never visited Epstein's Island.
Never?
Never. Not even once. No. There's no evidence of that whatsoever.
Were you ever at Epstein Island?
Absolutely not. And if a person who wants to say this online wants to say it again and attach your name to it and your address, I will sue you in a heartbeat. A, I don't own a bull mask. B, I've never been to Epstein's Island, and I have nothing whatsoever to do with Jeffrey Epstein other than to say, in my book, The Clintons' War on Women, I'm the first guy in America to expose expose him. It's the longest chapter in the book, and I tie him right to the people who financed him, Bill and Hillary Clinton. So, but I see this constantly online. Stone, what about your visit to Epstein Island? There is no such evidence, but if you want to say that, that's fine. Attach your name and address to it. You'll hear from my lawyers.
I probably would have gone to Epstein Island the first time.
I wouldn't.
You know, like you don't know it till you go. Like you don't know anybody. Your billionaire buddy wants to fly you to this place
You
in
don't
the
think
Bahamas.
there was like pretense, like
You don't think there were like
you don't think they
danger
had an
signs?
idea?
I don't think
no
so.
red flags.
Nah, I've gone to strip clubs with producers and then afterwards been like, yeah, I don't want to go out with this guy again. This guy's weird. But you don't know that until you go, you know? No?
No.
Bold statement, buddy.
Listen, in retrospect.
But it's honest, and I
in
appreciate it. You're always
retrospect,
honest.
Of course.
You're always
with the
But
power
when
of
you
hindsight,
saw the little
I'd
kids
say-
running around,
I would've been like,
would you maybe be like, hey, would
that
you
seems
talk
young.
to someone
Yeah,
at
how come
least?
there's a lot of children here, but no parents. What the?
There's a great story in my book, which Trump told me. Once and only once, he is invited to Epstein's house in Palm Beach. And Epstein just badgered him, having this reception, just want you to drop by. Trump says, okay, I'll drop by. He's pulling up to the house, and he says to his driver, look at that. Jeff Epstein, what a great guy. Look at all those kids. He lets the neighborhood kids use his pool. What a guy. What a guy. Trump walks in. He walks back out in 5 minutes, says, let's get out of here. Something creepy going on in there. What was it, boss? It was me and Epstein. It was a bunch of kids. There were no other adults there. I said, hey, Jeff, glad to be here. I showed up, and he left.
I kind of feel the need to beat the shit out of everyone with a baseball bat at the party.
You could do more than that,
Well,
Yeah.
Mr.
Yeah.
UFC.
Yeah. Mick, and also let's give a shout out to our boys Scrap and Ryan Montgomery doing.
Yeah, I just saw
need
Scrappy
to,
today.
I need to cleanse my soul with a 501 PC shout out 561 PC shout out the Predator Hunters down here doing amazing stuff.
They catch guys talking to. Have you seen it? They're talking to like little kids and stuff. They set up like an adult doing it, and then when they go somewhere, they show up
Yeah,
and
the
are like,
Predator
Hey,
Hunters.
what's
A
up,
hacker
Steve?
and an
We know what
MMA
you're here
fighter
doing.
got together on this. It's pretty.
But does anyone get
Saving
prosecuted
kids.
off of this?
It's hard. It's hard because the way they come up with the information isn't like really legal.
Because they only listen.
But they call the cops, they embarrass
poison
them.
tree.
If you just want to know one thing, the only people that get prosecuted have to be named Trump or anyone that voted for him. If there's any other crime, it's all debatable behind the scenes.
Listen, I hate
Sadly true.
I hate the fact that it's true because it's you want to be like, man, this guy's always complaining or whining, but it's true. I mean,
it's true.
Sam Bankman-Fried.
Oh, I saw that.
They just let Sam Bankman-Fried out. This guy embezzled more money than Madoff.
yeah, but he'll walk.
He'll walk.
Because he has the right connections.
So if you're a Republican, how do you get anybody from the donor class to get on board with you?
You don't need anybody from the donor class. Donald Trump's money's never come from the donor class. Trump's money comes from small and medium-sized contributions, little mom and pops.
Blue-collar
It's
people.
always been where his money come from. Every time you read these stories about, this major billionaire bundler switched from Trump to DeSantis, do your research. He was for Trump right after Trump won the election. Oh, he gave to Trump's inauguration. That does not make you a Trump supporter.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think Reagan never got the big money either. He was never the toast of Wall Street, never the toast of the financial elite. You don't need them. Trump's money comes from small donors. He's raised $8 million since he was charged. Since. Last public number is 6.6. It's now up to 8.
If the GOP were to pull a Bernie Sanders, it's well documented now that Hillary, this is one of my funny things, we were talking about this off air, Mick, like when everybody's like, they would never rig an election. I'm like, they rigged their own primaries. It's well documented.
Yeah.
Hillary's camp used Donna Brazile and Dianne Feinstein and Debbie Wasserman Schultz to rig the primary against Bernie Sanders, right? So Bernie would have won that primary. Hillary won it. They rigged it.
This is proven factual.
Yes.
100%.
Yes.
100%. Donna Brazile
Yeah,
then
this is
did it, then wrote a book and made money off of doing it.
And ironically,
Rubbing
this was
your
among
face.
the documents Julian Assange got and published, showing that Debbie Wasserman Schultz, every man's first wife, that she rigged the primaries against Bernie.
Dianne Feinstein, who's been there how many decades now? Term limits. Dianne Feinstein.
Yes,
is one
but
of
I
the
hope she
reasons.
hangs on because I don't want Adam Schiff appointed to that seat.
That's true.
Voting is supposed to be term limits. Sometimes the W knows better than the W don't. But the idea is, again, going back to Assange, the idea that these people are somehow morally above this when they would rig their own primary. Juxtapose that to today. The uniparty that you mentioned before. Let's say that they get together and they rig the GOP primary against Donald Trump. Would you advise him to run then as a third-party candidate?
It will be too late First of all, he will have contended presumably in the primary, so the sore loser laws would kick in, but also the deadlines for getting on the ballot in most states will pass prior to the primary. So it would be too late, and it would also be financially extraordinary. I mean, he's a billionaire, but even then, the cost would be exceptional. Again, what I said earlier, they make it as difficult as they can to get on the ballot unless you're a Republican or a Democrat. And if you're trying to get on the ballot in the primaries to challenge the party, they make that difficult too.
So the chances of
in New York
Ross
State,
Perot are
it was a different time, and Ross Perot spent a lot of his own money, but it was a very different time. So in New York State, for example, if I signed a petition to get somebody on the ballot, and I signed it Roger Stone, but I'm on the voter rolls as Roger J. Stone Jr., that signature is invalid. That's the rule.
Interesting.
They make it as difficult as possible. The Republicans and the Democrats don't want competition. They don't want competition, and they write the rules. So if they rig the Republican nomination against Donald Trump, they'll lose anyway. They can nominate anybody they want. They'll lose.
What do you think about the third parties, like the Libertarian Party in particular?
I was very briefly a member of the Libertarian Party when they nominated Mitt Romney. The guy was such a phony, such a total fraud who believed in nothing.
A fugazi.
And I remember very well when his father, George Romney, knifed Barry Goldwater in the back, the same way that Mitt knifed Donald Trump in the back. Now, let's be very clear. Mitt lives in Massachusetts. He doesn't live in Utah. He may have family roots in Utah, but he doesn't live in Utah. He goes to Trump and says, I want to run for the Senate in Utah. Trump says, yeah, so what? Well, the state attorney general wants to run. He's a Trump guy. You need to get him out of the race. Okay, Mitt, I'll get him out of the race. Gets him out of the race. Now what? Mr. President, you need to endorse me in the primary. Okay. All right, Mitt, I'll endorse you in the primary. Now Mitt becomes a senator. What's the first thing he do? Knifes Trump right in the back on the impeachment. The man is no good. He believes in nothing. He can't even keep a consistent hair color. He's got different color hair every time I see him. The guy's had more plastic surgery than Debbie Wasserman Schultz. I mean, there's nothing real about this guy. He believes in nothing other than lining his own pockets. Remember when he's running for president, he said, I'm severely conservative? No one who is a conservative would ever describe himself as severely conservative.
Nobody remembers anything about Mitt Romney except binders full of women.
So
that was the.
You were saying though about the Libertarian Party.
Well, so the problem is they're just as crazy as everybody else. I met a lot of great people in the Libertarian Party, but there's a wing of the party that is our anarchists. Think about this for a moment. If you are an anarchist, then you shouldn't belong to any organized political party because you don't believe in organization. So you would go to a convention with these people and you would say, "Wait a minute, you can't do that. The convention rules say we don't obey any rules. We're anarchists." Well, then you shouldn't be a member of this party.
That's so true.
I mean, they nominated Bob Barr, who's a very good guy, former congressman for Georgia. They nominated him for president. There's only one problem. I like Bob Barr. I think he's a very good man, but he's not a libertarian. Not even remotely a libertarian. And then subsequently, they love to nominate somebody you never heard of who can't raise $5.
Yeah.
And then they expect to make it as a party.
Yeah.
They nominated Gary Johnson twice. Gary Johnson was a very credible candidate, had a great record as governor of New Mexico, balanced the budget, cut taxes, created more jobs than the governors of Texas and Massachusetts
But he didn't know
together.
where Aleppo was.
But interestingly enough, in 2012, when I supported him, no one in the media would cover him. CNN never once during that entire year acknowledged that he existed. But 4 years later, when he's running against Donald Trump, and they thought he might siphon votes from Trump, suddenly they're giving him his own town hall. I'll tell you the other strange thing. Bill Weld's a friend of mine, his vice presidential running mate. In 2012, when I decided to leave the party of Lincoln, Goldwater, and Reagan to become a libertarian, and I was advising Gary Johnson, I said, look, we need a vice presidential candidate who will blow their doors off. There are two possibilities. Barry Goldwater Jr., former congressman, son of Barry Goldwater Sr., the nominee. Oh, Gary says he's a friend of mine. I talked to Barry. He's a great guy. Can't leave the Republican Party. Just too tough. Can't do it. Okay. I said, the other guy is Bill Weld. So I called Bill Weld, who's a friend of mine. Very, very smart guy. And I said, hey, I'd like to see you. And he said, sure, let's have lunch at the Harvard Club. Okay. So I meet him and I say, look, I'd like you to consider running for vice president of Liberty. Are you out of your mind?
Yeah.
Are you out of your mind?
That would be the response
This is
of a
2012.
Democrat.
Are you out of your mind? I'm not doing that. I said, okay, I thought I'd ask. 4 years later, now I'm supporting Donald Trump. Guess who out of the blue contacts Gary Johnson and says, I want to run for vice president? Bill Weld, who then used that position to campaign for Hillary Clinton and attack
He was a
Donald
Democrat.
Trump. Because he was promised an ambassadorship. Hey, Bill, you're never getting your ambassadorship. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm not a big fan of Bill. Well, the biggest problem, in my estimation, Mick, for the Libertarian Party is they want to win debates online. They don't want to win seats of power. That's
half of the people in the party,
they want to be the smart guy in the room. They don't want to actually.
And there's a lot
win.
of purists there. There's some pragmatists, but some people say, look, child pornography should be legal. No, I'm sorry, it should not.
What was that? The what?
There are people in the party who think child pornography should be legal because they're for all freedom. They're against any restrictions. I'm sorry.
I can't go for that.
We don't need an army or a navy. We don't need any military. We should disband them all. Well, because the Libertarian Party has wings. It has a more traditional conservative wing, and it has a more liberal, left, anarchist wing. Any mature party, that's the case. But please nominate a candidate for president that someone has heard of and who can raise more than $5.
I'll tell you what, the real reason they don't want, like, Gary Johnson stole debates that he was actually allowed to be a part of. When he acted like he was having a heart attack because he was smoking a joint, it was the best soundbite of the whole debate. If, God forbid, Dave Smith was ever allowed, a professional comedian, a professional speaker, if he was ever allowed on that debate stage, he would be the only person anybody talked about after.
Well, don't worry, you'll never let him on the stage.
They won't let him on. They just won't do it.
Do you think we're running into it? I mean, we're live on YouTube right now, hopefully still. Do you think we're coming to a place in time where those traditional gatekeepers are as necessary?
I don't think it's a question of being necessary. I just think their power will become less. The guy who's really breaking through is Robert Kennedy. He's breaking through. Mm-hmm. They are censoring him on ABC, NBC, CBS,
but he goes on Joe Rogan. And
but by going on Joe Rogan, by doing a Twitter space, by doing alternative media, he is, in a very interesting way, breaking through. This is why I spend so much time talking about him, writing about him, covering him on my show, because I find it interesting, just from a point of view of political science. Cable television is going to go the way of broadcast television. Broadcast television's over. CBS, ABC, NBC. Nobody is watching.
Yeah.
And to the extent that anybody is watching, they're watching it online. Mm-hmm. Cable is going that way. For whatever reason, the people who own Fox have decided that they're going to tank the thing. It's losing ratings, it's losing money, and ultimately it will just close their doors.
What happened behind the scenes there with Tucker Carlson?
Tucker was too dangerous. He's a truth teller. Whether it was the power of Big Pharma, or whether it was his interview with Robert Kennedy, or whether it was his questioning of the election. We now have a decision in the Eighth Circuit of the United States where they have uncovered this report that shows that Georgia officials knew that the machines could be hacked. NBC's covering that because they have to.
Because the Democrat lost, so those machines can be hacked.
So the point, I guess, is that Tucker was telling too many truths, and they want to sideline him.
Fox.
They want to sideline him through the 2024 election. They want to make sure that he has no platform. He's going to fight them, in court. His Twitter posts now, his Twitter show, which is only 10 minutes long.
Yeah.
He's dwarfing the numbers that he got on cable.
Oh yeah.
Now that's both good, but
he's also
big time.
No holds barred. He's throwing some haymakers.
Look, he's been a friend of mine for 30 years, and I probably wouldn't be sitting here if he had not championed a pardon for me because he knew my entire case was a fraud. I did nothing wrong. There is no Russian collusion. There is no WikiLeaks collaboration. The judge said to me when you're sentenced, you have been convicted of lying to cover up for Donald Trump, to which I said, cover up what? What is it I was covering up? It's a fraud. To go back to the point, however, there are voters, older voters, they're not on Twitter. They're not even online. They're used to turning on the TV set and seeing programming. And those are the people Tucker Carlson will not get to anymore. Mm-hmm. So while he is more powerful in some senses, in other ways, he's less powerful.
Yeah. And I remember Tucker, when Roger went through, I was there every step of the way with Roger. Tucker was probably the premier guy in the media that was behind Roger and constantly mentioned Roger's name and the entire injustice of that entire case, whether it was the judge or how they were treating him in D.C., even the way they got jurors for the grand jury, they were high-fiving each other in the back, as I was told. So he was the one outlining the whole thing where other people kind of turned the corner when they heard Roger's name, or they didn't want to mention anything about Roger. They didn't think it was right. And some of these people today, couple of years ago, they were all saying Roger, Roger, Roger. Well, let's say Roger. Now today, they act like they don't know Roger.
Well, I think Tucker Carlson.
Tucker was the number one guy.
Tucker Carlson.
He was always behind them.
If I remember correctly, I think he called you the Forrest Gump of American politics.
Yeah.
Every time you look somewhere, there he is standing in the background.
Tucker Carlson has been a friend of mine for 30 years. The irony is the hatred towards him makes no sense. He is one of the most decent.
Agreed.
And even when he had liberals on his show, he never cuts them off the way Chris Cuomo does. He always lets them talk. He was unfailingly polite. He's one of the most decent people you're ever going to meet. He's truly just a fine gentleman and a truly loyal friend. The level of hatred for him on the left, simply because he speaks the truth, is really hard to understand.
Where are the allegations of him being a white supremacist? Where do those stem from?
They're
insane.
absurd. Look, they call me a white supremacist constantly. You know what? I was opposed to stop and frisk in New York City. All my conservative friends think I'm wrong, but I'm sorry. You should not be pulled over and frisked because of the color of your skin. You can call me any name you want. That's my position. I support affirmative action, which was a Nixon administration proposal. My conservative friends kicked the crap out of me over that.
And we've already established you're Sicilian from the waist down.
I support, and it's a short swim from Sicily to Africa. I was opposed to Reagan ending the Voting Rights Act. I call out the war on drugs. The war on drugs, as started by Richard Nixon, was focused on drug traffickers and drug kingpins. It was Bill Clinton and
the crime bill. That was
Joe Biden.
Joe Biden bill, yeah.
And Joe Biden,
the omnibus,
who passed a bill that mandates the harsh mandatory penalties for the first time nonviolent crime of possession of small amounts of drugs by the individual.
Can you imagine the balls of Joe Biden sponsoring that bill? And then having a son like Hunter Biden get away with what he's gotten away with.
Or saying
that man has put millions of human lives behind
destroyed them generations.
The majority of them being African American, by the way.
And the nerve of him saying to the guy, "If you're not for me, you ain't black." Joe Biden is a segregationist. Joe Biden said, when he was running for the Senate in 1972, "I'm against the Wilmington schools being segregated because they will be a racial jungle, and I don't want my daughter going to school in a jungle." You talk about the dog whistle. There's the dog whistle. Probably because of his close friends in the U.S. Senate, KKK Grand Wizard Robert Byrd and Strom Thurmond, and James O. Eastland. These are the guys he hung out with. Joe Biden is an unreconstructed segregationist, always has been his entire life. He has no civil rights record. This idea, I marched with King. No, you didn't. You didn't march with anyone, other than maybe the Grand Wizard himself.
It was at his funeral, I believe. It was at his funeral.
Yeah, there was a...
we talked about that.
There was a fact check. Right? There was a Facebook fact check that said that was false. And
but then also we looked it up and
clicked on it and said, well, he wasn't the Grand Wizard. He was the Deputy Grand Wizard.
But that he eulogized them.
Deputy.
I mean, look, he was a member...
It was a what the thing is,
he was a member. He was a member of the Klan. He signs the...
Not Joe Biden.
No.
Yeah,
Robert Byrd. But he signs the Southern Manifesto in 1958. He's part of the bloc that opposes the only...
We got to dot our I's and cross our T's, man. The Google China Tube is gonna. If we get one thing even like off by a word here, we're gonna get crashed. So.
I know my history pretty well.
Yeah. What do you think of Alex Jones? What are your thoughts on Alex Jones? And I'll preface it by saying I never took Alex Jones seriously until they silenced him.
It's kind of an unfair question because Alex Jones is a very good friend of mine. And Alex Jones always treated me extraordinarily well. Remember, I did a show on InfoWars at 5 o'clock every day called The War Room. You might remember that name because Steve Bannon stole it for his radio show.
That's right.
Speaking of intellectual property. And I like Alex Jones. He's always been incredibly good to me. I don't agree with him on everything. I disagree with him on some things. I probably agree with him on most things. But he's always been very good to me. He's very, very smart. I wouldn't want to debate the guy if I were some leftist, but that's why they never want a debate. I will say this, though. The Alex Jones you see on the air, that is the real Alex Jones.
Oh, yeah.
Turning red, screaming. That is the real Alex Jones.
1776 will commence again.
I can confirm that I've seen that in person myself with Alex.
It's not like he's one person on the air and somebody else off the air. Most people in public life, they have two personas, their public persona and their private persona. There is only one Alex Jones. He is that same guy.
Yep.
That's interesting. Why do you think they chose him to silence out of all the people? Why
Because
do you
he
think
reaches millions and millions of people and he changes minds. Because he has been, pardon the expression, the tip of the spear, and they know it, and therefore they have to silence him. I'm not a lawyer, but I really do believe under the First Amendment he's allowed to say whatever crazy thing he wants, and if you don't like it, you don't have to listen. You don't have to listen.
Alex
But the
is a
idea you can be
flamethrower.
sued for mental infliction because he expressed his opinion, those cases you need to go to the U.S. Supreme Court. Maybe they'll do the right thing, or maybe they won't.
So let me ask you that, right? Because this is, again, now I come back to like the impotence of the right. Alex Jones gets sued. A left-wing activist lawyer gets sued for an insane amount of money for his statements on Sandy Hook, which he now admits were incorrect. But doesn't that then set a precedent? And where is the crazy right-wing activist suing all of these anchors on mainstream media every night for all of their lies over the last 4 or 5 years? Why isn't there a massive lawsuit against Rachel Maddow? Why is
Because it would immediately be dismissed by some liberal judge. That's why.
That's a New York jurisdiction, too. She's in New York.
So the point is you'd never get a fair hearing. Alex Jones, unfortunately for him, lives in Austin, the most liberal district in Texas.
Yep.
Trust me, if that case were heard in any other judicial district in Texas, it would have been dismissed.
So he's going to take it all the way to the Supreme Court.
Presumably, ultimately. In the meantime, they hobble him financially. Don't kid yourself. His audience continues to grow and grow and grow. He's selling more and more and more stuff. I'm not sure he can access that cash under the rules of the bankruptcy. He's living very strictly under the rules of the bankruptcy. But they wouldn't attack him if he was not effective. They wouldn't try to destroy him if he wasn't breaking through.
You did bring up one thing though with Jones, and we'll go back to even with the President Trump. They actually brought cases against Alex Jones in 2 different districts, Connecticut and Texas. Just like with Trump, they're trying to go to D.C., Florida, and now they're going to try, I guess, New Jersey, and they have New York as well.
Which proves the whole thing is political. Knows why do we need a
Exactly.
plan B if this is really just about justice? So it is. Look, I'm still a fan of InfoWars. I don't care who doesn't like it. I'm still a good friend of Alex Jones, and I do the show pretty regularly.
Yeah, and again, it's almost like the more they censor people, the more backlash there is. Because I never took him seriously. I always thought, Robert Kennedy, I've always thought he was a loon. I didn't know. I listened to the people who said these people were crazy, and I'm like, well, I like these people. If they say he's crazy, he must be crazy. Then I listen to these people, and I say, man, you know what? He's not nearly as crazy as they told me he was.
Well, Alex Jones, they always made fun of him for saying the water was turning the frogs gay.
Yeah.
Now you have Robert Kennedy documenting the fact that the crap they put in the water does change the sexual nature of the frogs. It happens to be a fact.
And it's our
Jones
water.
seems
Right.
like very ahead of his time. Like stuff he was
Yeah.
saying years ago, people were like, "I was crazy," and then you look at it now and you're like, "Wow."
Yeah, although it is rather galling to have Joe Rogan, who will not have me on his show, keep giving Alex Jones credit for exposing Jeffrey Epstein, when in fact I had to explain to Jones who Jeffrey Epstein was, who for years he called Jerry Epstein, just to prove my point.
He was one of the first ones that had some sizable questions about 9/11 as well. And and my initial reaction to all the 9/11 skepticism, probably because I disliked Michael Moore so much, was like, oh God, all right. But then as you start getting into the details of it, you're like, man, that Building 7 does not make a lot of sense.
Also,
man.
I think Jones was arrested in New York City for protesting the Republican National Committee, which was, by the way, I think mishandled by the NYPD at that time. So in 2004.
I don't recall
Yep,
that.
he was there. And they made the NYPD itself, it was just a disaster, what happened there.
So, Roger, where do you think we go from here?
Well, I mean, look, I think there's only one guy who can save the country and change the fundamental system. Donald Trump has to run the tables. He has to draw to an inside straight. Can it be done? Can be done. We don't know when these various trials will be. That will become very key. They're going to try to fast track the trials so they can hobble his campaign. If he has decent legal representation, that remains to be seen as well. There are a number of ways that his lawyers can justifiably and legally slow this process down so he has a fair chance at trial. If he is convicted and elected president, or if he's convicted convicted after he's elected president, he can pardon himself on all these federal charges. So the jury here is really going to be the American people. The jury's not going to be these people in the courtroom in Florida, not really. It's not going to be a jury in New Jersey. It's not going to be a jury conceivably in D.C. It's going to be the American people. They are going to be able to make a decision. He's going to run for president using these indictments like a badge of courage. Look, they're charging me with a crime because they want to derail my presidential campaign. This is a reason for you, if you think this is bogus, to vote for me. He's a very tough road ahead, but it's exceedingly doable. What's amazing about him, to me, he was on my WABC radio show for my first show, and I expected, 10 minutes, maybe 20 if I was lucky. He stayed the whole hour. This is between the time that he's charged and the time that he's arraigned. He's cool as a cucumber. I mean, he's calm, he's funny, he's talkative, he's resolute. There's just no evidence that he's bothered or stressed by any of this. I mean, look, I work for Nixon. I work for Bob Dole. They're both very, very tough guys. Tough. Neither one of them nearly as tough as Donald Trump. This guy has ice water in his veins. This is not a guy you want to get in a cage match with. Governor DeSantis is about to find that out the hard way. This is not a guy you want to get into.
How do you foresee him fixing all this?
Any president has enormous executive power. Start by appointing an attorney general who will actually enforce the law. Start by appointing a CIA director and an FBI director who will then investigate both those agencies and expose the corruption to the American people. The President of the United States can clean up this system. It all goes right to one office. We have sadly enough, an imperial presidency. That is, not only is that the solution, that is the only solution.
It's got to be an uphill battle with those two powers, the CIA and the FBI.
It's very clear. It's clearly an uphill battle. But my friend, if you will read in the Bible, in every great battle, the forces of the Lord are always overwhelmingly outnumbered, and they always win.
Right.
So you can think it's corny or trite, or you can think it's some kind of pose. I put my faith in Christ. I think he's going to deliver us. I think he's going to save the nation, and I think he's going to save Western civilization. So you ask me, what is my political strategy? Praying. That's my political strategy.
Really?
Yeah, but I mean, maybe also donate and debate just in case. But
Well, I'm not against the donate part.
What about us as people listening? What can just for obviously it's crazy times right now. Where it's everything's so polarizing and everybody's
First of all, don't tune out. Don't say this whole thing's so dirty, it's so disgusting. I'm not going to participate.
Putting the head in the sand.
You're hearing that from a lot of people.
A lot of people are just like,
you can't afford to do that.
No.
So you have to stay plugged in. Secondarily,
Stay
pray.
involved.
I don't care if you're a Christian or a Jew or a Muslim. Pray. Pray for justice. Pray. It's powerful. Saved me. It can save the country.
Saving me as we speak.
Thirdly, donate. Never give a penny to the Republican National Committee or the Republican Congressional Committee or the Republican Senatorial. They will use that money against the candidates that you like. Pick individual men and women whose message you like, who you're impressed with, and give directly to them. You like what Robert Kennedy's saying and doing? Send him $25.
Support him.
He's in an uphill battle against the same people Trump is battling. But people need to stay plugged in. You see a story online that moves you, that you think is really interesting and compelling, post it. Send it to all your friends by email. Put it up on your own social media. They may be able to kneecap me at Facebook. They can kneecap me at Instagram. They can kneecap me at YouTube. They can kneecap me at TikTok, which I don't really care about because I don't want the red Chinese in my phone anyway.
Nah, they're there anyway.
But they can't kneecap everybody. So if you see something compelling that really moves you, some nugget of truth, put it up on your.
How do you delineate truth from misinformation?
It's in the eye of the beholder. You read it and you make a decision. Here's what I don't like.
You need to
ABC
compare?
saying we can't send this to you because it's misinformation. We don't trust you to make up your own mind.
Yep.
Let each individual decide what they believe.
Yeah, there's this elitist gatekeeping that somehow they are the arbiter of truth, and you can't. You
Arbiter of
peasant.
truth. That's my case.
You
Who's
peasant
the arbiter of
could
truth?
not. There's no way you could comprehend this insanely difficult concepts of.
I keep hearing. It's funny you guys keep mentioning Robert F. Kennedy over and over again. I actually wanted him to say one thing here. Going back to his uncle, if we go back, Roger, in 19, and just let him speak about this because it's important. A lot of people out there, I know they want to hear about crazy conspiracies or JFK. 1960 election, Roger. Who really won that? Did JFK really win that?
No,
election?
Richard Nixon won that election. You can see
Explain
it. You can see it in my book, You can see it in two of my books, Nixon's Secrets.
Nixon agrees.
Nixon. Let me put it this way: the
Chicago
the Herald Tribune, which was a major newspaper, did a 10-part series documenting the theft of the 1960 election. You can't find that online anywhere. It doesn't exist. I had to dig into a basement in this warehouse in New York to find the microfilm on which it's listed. The 1960 election was stolen in Chicago, but also stolen in Texas. Nixon made a lot of mistakes in that election, but he still came on strong in the final 2 weeks. He conserved his television money to the end. He finally got Eisenhower up off the bench. Eisenhower did stops in L.A., New York City, and I think it was Philadelphia, draw enormous crowds. Nixon won that election. It was stolen from
I've heard this before, and my point is going to be the same thing that it was 4 years ago, same thing that it was in the midterms. Just win, baby. Who got to be president?
Well, but let's be very clear.
Who got to be president?
So you're right.
If you don't fix Maricopa County, I don't want to hear about Carrie Lake.
So you're saying what? If they cheat better?
Brother, the job is to win. If the dead vote for Democrat, they can vote for Republican too. Roger, I can't believe I have to say this to you of all people. If you play by their rules that they don't play by, you're not noble. You're a sucker.
You can't go out and break the law to win an election just because they do it. I can't justify that.
You got to win an election.
Let's be very clear. In 1960, Nixon gets cheated. Eisenhower tells him you should challenge the election. Tom Dewey, the nominee in 44 and 48 governor, tells him you should challenge the election. Barry Goldwater, Nelson Rockefeller, they said, Dick, you should challenge the election. They robbed you. Nixon says, no, then I'll be a sore loser. I'll be back. And he was.
And what happened to him, though, it was always in his head.
And he made the greatest single political comeback in American history in 1968, risen from the dead. And then they ran him off again, and guess what?
And then
4 presidents showed up at his funeral and said he was the greatest president of all time.
Somewhere between those two things, something happened.
No, they took him down, but did that end him? Was he finished? Did he just take up? No, he was back on the scene. He was shuttling, and in his 90s, he's going to China and Russia, and then coming back and meeting with the President of the United States saying, here's what's really going on.
Sure, but do you think if he wasn't so convinced that he got cheated out of that first election, he would have tried to cheat the second time?
He didn't cheat the second time, though. He didn't have to.
No, he was going to win, but he did. He did cheat. He got caught.
Talking Watergate?
Yeah.
He didn't authorize Watergate. There's no evidence of that whatsoever. Why would you do that? You're leading in 49 states by double digits. And if you're in politics, you know there's nothing at the Democratic National Committee worth knowing.
What do you think?
You don't think he was worried that it would get
No, I think John Dean authorized the break-in at the Watergate because he was trying to get the records of his wife's service as a hooker.
What?
Read one of my books, dude. Please read.
Reading's so tough.
Read White House Call Girl by Phil Stanford. It's all there. By the way, John Dean wants to come sue me. Bring it on, brother. Bring it. He sued everybody else who said this, but he won't sue me because he knows he could not stand cross-examination.
So then, if that's the case, why wouldn't Nixon come out and say that?
Because for 19 months, John Dean lied to him. Mr. President, this has no connection to us. Nobody authorized it in the White House. Nobody knew about this. This was this crazy guy, Gordon Liddy. For 19 months, John Dean is misleading him. He doesn't know the truth until it's too late.
And he resigns because of it?
He resigned because they were about to remove him and he didn't have the votes. Well, let's remember, it's not like today when there's an internet. There's 3 networks and there's 2 major newspapers. And if they're against you, what is your platform to launch your counterattack? From where do you get to launch your defense? You don't. This is something I can't quite get Trump to understand. Trump always says to me, I don't understand why Nixon resigned. Why didn't he fight it out? Fight it out from where? They wouldn't cover anything he had to say. When he comes out and says, I am not a crook, instead of covering what he says, they make fun of him. If there had been an internet in 1973, 74, he never would have resigned. And guess what? He would have survived.
Wow.
You would have been able to ride out the tide.
Speaking of your books, would you be willing to share some of your Stone's rules with our audience?
Sure.
I'm a big fan of them.
Stone's Rules is a book I wrote, which is a manual for life. It's not really political. You don't have to be a conservative or a libertarian or a Republican or Trump supporter. It doesn't really matter whether you're in tech or fashion or agriculture or media or retail. These are all the things that I have learned in life. The most important rule is the one that says never give up. A man is not finished when he's defeated. He's only finished when he quits. Never give up. That's probably
that.
my famous rule. But if you want my recipe for marinara sauce, it's in the book as well. So it's my mother's and my grandmother's.
So we got the seminal rule.
The Sunday gravy.
Sunday gravy. Gravy, not a sauce guy.
Said he's Sicilian.
It's where you're from. It's where you.
Said he's Sicilian.
It's where you
Little
grew up.
brunch, a little meat in
There's
the
a lot
gravy.
there's a lot of Stones rules even I follow. I mean, look, anything important, blue suit.
Right.
Stones
exactly.
rule.
Right.
Yeah,
You
that's-
want to be taken seriously? Wear a blue suit.
Right.
Nixon's
Us ragamuffins over
big
here,
mistake.
G.
Big mistake. Goes to the 1960 event. They say. I mean, people don't realize this, but in the 1960 election, right after Labor Day, Nixon bumps his knee on the car door in West Virginia. He gets a staph infection in his knee. He's laying in the hospital for 2 weeks. Kennedy's crisscrossing the country, running up a lead. Nixon's forced to watch this on TV. They've got him shot full of antibiotics. Kennedy challenges him to a series of debates. All of Nixon's advisors, including Eisen, said, why are you going to debate this guy? He's less known than you. He hasn't been vice president for 8 years. Everybody knows he's a lightweight. Everybody knows his father's a bootlegging gangster. Why would you give this guy a platform? To everyone's surprise, Nixon agrees to debate this guy. Nixon comes out of the hospital a week before the doctors want to release him. He's still on antibiotics. He's lost 15 pounds. He looks like hell.
When he's sweating.
Right.
No, yeah.
He goes to the debate in Chicago. John Kennedy's on the roof of the hotel getting a suntan with 2 hookers.
Yeah.
Nixon's in his room cramming for the debate.
Legend.
They go to the lighting test, which is like the weigh-in in a prize fight. They say Nixon's face looks almost as gray as his suit. They go to Senator Kennedy. Senator Kennedy, will you be requiring makeup for tonight's debate? Kennedy says, no makeup for me. Now, Kennedy, they say, looked like a bronzed god. He'd been laying in the sun all day. Looks great. Nixon hears this. They say, Mr. Vice President, will you be requiring makeup for tonight? No makeup for me. Now Kennedy goes to his dressing room where his private makeup man who's been flown in from New York makes him a head fake. Nixon, they say to Nixon, Mr. Vice President, you look like hell. You gotta have makeup. No, I don't want any makeup. He's not wearing makeup. If I wear makeup, they're going to say it's girly. I don't want any makeup. They say, you got a heavy beard. We got to do something about that. So he agrees, and they sent out for a product called Lazy Shave, which is a makeup that you use to conceal your 5 o'clock shadow. So they put this on Nixon. Now, the Kennedy guys go in, they turn off the air conditioning in the studio. They go to the debate. And to Nixon's surprise,
Dirty trick.
They're winners.
John Kennedy is not hitting him from the left. John Kennedy's hitting him from the right. You have no plan to get rid of Castro. You've let the Russians pull ahead of us in terms of our nuclear strength. Now Nixon starts sweating. The makeup is starting to roll down his
melting
face.
him.
It's Giuliani.
He's melting them.
Oh, God.
Nixon's own mother calls Rosemary Woods, Nixon's assistant, says, is Richard unwell?
Oh,
Mayor Daley, who's in a big rally they're watching on TV, says, he's not even dead yet, and they've embalmed him. Here's the part they don't tell you. There isn't one debate. There are 4. There are 3 more debates.
Sure.
Nixon comes back. He goes on a milkshake diet. He puts the 15 pounds back on. He gets a sun lamp. He tans him up. He kicks Kennedy's ass in debates 2, 3, and 4. Now they will tell you, but none of those debates had as large an audience as the first one.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, that's wrong. The 4th debate
First impression.
had 100,000 people less than the first debate. This is why I say he won. It's why I say he came back. But
the interesting about that too, Roger, is that the people who listened to the debate thought Nixon won it.
Right, those who listened to it on the radio.
Yeah.
People who watched it.
People watched it. It was a blowout.
Which is very interesting. So Henry Cabot Lodge, who was Nixon's running mate for vice president, watches the first debate and says the son of a bitch has blown it for us. Lyndon Johnson, who's busy in Texas stealing votes, listens to it on the radio and says, Jesus, Jack got his ass kicked. Interesting.
Really?
Interesting.
Wow.
By the way, the Kennedy-Johnson ticket carried Texas by 25,000 votes. 95,000 Nixon Lodge votes were burned that night in Dallas County alone by the Quislings and the henchmen of Lyndon Baines Johnson, the most corrupt, nut job psychopath to ever serve as president. Pill popper, womanizer, drug addict, sadist, criminal,
Yeah, I've heard
and
some
murderer.
stories, yeah.
Read my book, The Man Who Killed Kennedy, The Case Against LBJ.
Yeah, it said some very questionable racist things as well.
In that tranche of documents, from the Kennedy assassination that Trump declassified. You know what we have? LBJ's application to be a member of the Ku Klux Klan. It's right in there.
Wow.
That's a bombshell. That's crazy.
Wow.
I got to ask you 2 questions, man. First of all, Roger, thank you so much for your time today, man. You've been so generous. This has been really great. As a guy, I've been in politics before.
Thanks to Sal Greco for getting you in here.
Big Sal Greco. This has been great. Now, you were, by some estimates, a pioneer of dirty politics. You were willing to go places other people weren't willing to go.
Talking like mudslinging?
You were a mudslinger. You pushed the envelope. This is what your friends and enemies would say about you.
Yeah, I would argue with some of that. I was prepared to do anything necessary to elect my candidate short of breaking the law.
Sure.
Politics ain't beanbag. This has always been a blood sport in the United States. Look, the opponents of Abraham Lincoln handed out flyers saying that he was of mixed race and that he fathered a mixed race child. So that is not exactly beanbag.
You're not a know-nothing who was literally campaigning to get the Irish back across the...
But when they say self-described dirty trickster Roger Stone, I challenge anyone to provide where I said that. I made the LA Times withdraw that because I've never called myself that. I have acknowledged that other people have called me that. You know who those people are? Losers who I beat in elections.
But do you think you've been willing to go places other people perhaps haven't been willing to go early on in your career, let's say?
I think only technologically, yeah. The idea of buying a TV commercial and taking a senator's actual record in Idaho that the people don't know about and putting it on the air, that's going someplace where people have never been. There's nothing dirty or wrong about that, but it was pugilistic for its time.
Do you think that it we talked about it earlier about how things are kind of more divided than they've ever been before, maybe dirtier. Do you think your early success in those tactics have amplified the situation over time?
I didn't invent television. I didn't invent the internet. Those technologies lend themselves to comparative politics. I have no regrets about anything I've ever done politically. I've never broken the law. No, I was not the conduit between Russian intelligence and WikiLeaks. No, I never received anything from WikiLeaks and passed it on to the Trump campaign, and the government never produced any evidence to support that false narrative. So, no, you have to play the game based on the rules of the game. The problem is they're the ones who go beyond the rules. They're the ones who break the law. So making a lawyer testify against his client and turn over his notes, I would say there's an egregious act of illegality,
and when you
unconstitutionality.
And when we look at the uniparty that we talked about before, Republicans, Democrats, they disagree on this issue, that issue, constantly yelling at one another. They all seem to agree on one thing, and that's war. And we need to always be at war. We're always going over there. Somebody is in our crosshairs at all times. You've been in how many administrations? 4 administrations?
I have worked for 4 presidents. Actually, I spent a very brief time in the government in the Office of Economic Opportunity under Don Rumsfeld. I didn't even last 6 weeks. I did not want to be a bureaucrat.
Yeah.
But this, you're absolutely right. The leadership of both parties are for endless war. That doesn't mean the voters are for endless war. So I have always been an anti-interventionist. That's why I couldn't hold my nose and vote for Mitt Romney. It's why I joined the Libertarian Party. It's why I supported Donald Trump in 2016. Donald Trump didn't start any new wars. Donald Trump brought our troops back from the endless foreign wars. I am anti-war. So when it comes to the issue of war, I'm more like Bernie Sanders than I am like, say, Joe Biden, who's for permanent war.
The question I have is our war machine too insurmountable? Are they too powerful? Are people too afraid of them?
We're going to find out in the next election. I don't know the answer to the question. They're certainly powerful. Whether they can be defeated remains to be seen in the next election. But the next election will be your last election if Trump does not win. There will not be another election after that, in my opinion.
Do you think Trump has legitimate fear for his life running in this
If he
election?
doesn't, he certainly should have. So should Robert Kennedy. That's why I admire Robert Kennedy so much. I mean, he has been very open about the CIA's involvement in his uncle's death. He's been very specific about the fact that Sirhan did not kill his father. That's an absolute impossibility. His interview with Mike Tyson is really worth watching if you haven't seen the
I heard
whole
it's
thing.
been taken down.
It is.
Already find it?
boxing was taken down.
You
Where do
can
you
find
find
it. I showed it on my show. I showed 9 minutes of it. I showed the most important part. It's absolutely,
check that out.
absolutely riveting.
For those of us who haven't seen it, what did he say about
It's really simple. Sirhan, the man convicted of murdering Robert Kennedy, is in front of Robert Kennedy at all times. He discharges his gun 8 times. Every single one of those bullets is accounted for. None of them hit Robert Kennedy. The coroner ruled in the autopsy that Robert Kennedy was shot at point blank range from the back of the head, with the barrel right up against his skin from behind. The man behind him is a man named Thane Eugene Caesar, who was a security guard hired 5 weeks beforehand.
Three names.
That is the
Three
man,
names.
That is the man.
Lee Harvey Oswald.
That is
John Wilkes Booth.
Right.
It's the
Two
3
other-
names.
right.
Sirhan's just one name.
That's 2 names. Well, 1 name. Anyway.
It's 4 syllables.
In any event, so Robert Kennedy has been very, I think, authoritative. Look, I have read every book there is on the Kennedy assassination, and I've written one, which I ask people to judge on its own merit. By the way, I don't say Lyndon Johnson did this alone. I said he did it in conjunction with the Central Intelligence Agency and the mob and the banks and Big Texas Oil. Everybody has their own interest in this. But I think both Donald Trump and Robert Kennedy need to have very precise security measures, because I think both their lives are potentially in danger.
And this is why you keep big Roman Reigns around you.
No, he is uncompensated security.
Uncompensated
If some
security.
guy jumped me right outside, he looked the other way and asked for coffee.
I'd call for backup, maybe. Yeah. Acknowledge me.
So who before we get out of here, who's Roger Stone outside of politics? Who are you when the blue suit is hanging in the closet? Are you a pickleball fan? Are you a sports enthusiast?
That would be me, pickleball.
Is there life outside of politics? I've never heard of this before.
Less and less so. There used to be.
Mixed martial
You're a
arts.
fight fan, aren't you?
I'm a fight fan. When I went to Trump's wedding when he married Marla Maples at the Plaza Hotel in New York City, seated at my table was one of my all-time heroes, Smokin' Joe Frazier.
Smoking Joe.
The greatest heavyweight champion of them all.
Love
Smoking Joe?
Love Smokin' Joe.
Philly.
That heavy left hook.
Yeah, here all day.
Yeah.
Just is my all-time. It was one of the thrills of my lifetime. Also, by the way,
what was that? What was that again? How did that go?
Oh, he's here. He'd come in here and he'd be moving his head and whack.
Oh, no Philly shell from Smoking Joe?
Nah, he's pressure. He'd be here.
Was
heavy,
also,
coming
interestingly
forward.
enough, at that wedding, O.J. Simpson was at that wedding as a gift. And he was with a beautiful blonde woman who was very clearly not his wife. A guy comes up, and he takes the picture of O.J. and this blonde. O.J. says to the guy, come here. Grabs the guy's camera, smashes it on the table, hands it back to him and says, no pictures.
Player move right there.
I'm starting to get the feeling that Hillary Clinton's a little cold and O.J. Simpson might have a violent streak. I don't know.
Maybe.
Though. I don't know.
It's unconfirmed, allegedly.
Yeah,
Did you see the Arnold documentary that just came out on Netflix?
No, but I probably won't. I'm so disappointed in Arnold.
I was really hoping to get your opinion on that.
I remember when Arnold said he was a Ronald Reagan Republican. Now he says, you don't want to take the vaccination, screw your rights. No, Arnold, screw you. By the way, he goes to the Arnold Classic, and he won't shake hands with anybody. People ask him for selfies. He says no. Arnold Schwarzenegger's an asshole. He's turned into an asshole. If I go outside here and people ask me for a selfie, no matter who they are, I always say yes. I can be in the middle of a bite of burger and a guy comes, hey, Mr. Stone, can I? Yes. I never say no. I was going through an airport with Richard Nixon when I was working for him. Late 80s, there is no TSA. We're in Washington for some meetings. We're dashing for the gate. We're taking the shuttle to LaGuardia. We're late. This big fat woman steps up. Mr. President, can I get your autograph? I'm carrying 2 briefcases. Nixon says, put the briefcase down. Certainly, madam. Where are you from? I'm from Davenport, Iowa. Oh, Davenport, Iowa. I remember it very well. I was there in 1956. I did a big rally downtown at Yokin's Restaurant on Main Street. I think you were there. I was there. I was on the front row. I knew I recognized you, Nixon says. What's your name? Audrey. To Audrey. With love, Richard Nixon. Last call for Eastern Flight 124. We barely make the flight. I say to him, Mr. President, why did you stop and give that woman an autograph? He says, never refuse a request for a photograph or an autograph. Otherwise, they go home and they say, I met that Richard Nixon. What an asshole that guy was. So I never say no. Hey, Arnold, word to the wise. People ask for an autograph, give it to him. You deserve it. They
It's,
deserve
it's
it.
an honor. People,
It is.
yeah.
He's
It's
a schmuck.
It's a shame when the people get jaded to that.
He's a schmuck.
I want to defend Arnold's honor. I've heard from our boy Phil Heath that Arnold's really gracious at the Arnold Classics. I've heard the opposite, frankly. But
I was at the Arnold
I've
Classic.
seen video.
I was at the Arnold Class a couple years ago. I'll back Roger's statement up. I was right in front of Arnold.
What happened?
well,
when
it's very weird.
Who
in
is
the,
not
in the
6'3" or what did they say? He's 6'2".
Well, I mean,
6'2"?
you get
Try more like 5'10". I'm
You
6'3".
get smaller as you get
Yeah.
older, but I mean the odd thing is that the first two episodes are about Arnold, being a Reagan Republican, and the third was almost like an advertisement for him to get into the World Economic Forum, and he's all about climate change.
Yeah, give
and
me a
how
break.
It was a very, very.
By the way, it was a lousy.
interesting-
Just to be clear, he's a terrible governor. A terrible
that's
governor.
right.
Roger, what are your thoughts on the World Economic Forum? Gerard hates them.
Not a fan.
I mean, these guys are Batman villains. The little guy, Yuval Harari.
Oh, my God, yeah.
I mean, they say he's a vegan, but he sure looks like a meat eater to me, if you know what I mean.
You do not have human soul.
Eating a lot of falafel subs.
You
or
are
something.
not individual. You are hackable. You are a hackable animal.
The guy's 125 pounds wet. What do you think it would take to take him out? What do you think? One shot?
From that guy?
One shot.
A
One shot.
nasty stare.
But I love these guys because they're cartoon characters. The other guy doing the bad Henry Kissinger, you will eat bugs and you will like it.
Yeah,
No,
Klaus
asshole, we're
Schwab.
not eating your bugs.
What'd you
Sorry.
think of Henry Kissinger?
I was never a Kissinger fan. People need to understand.
Warmonger.
Right. So the Watergate really is a outgrowth of Henry Kissinger's paranoia. In 1969, it is Kissinger who convinces Nixon to place the illegal wiretaps on various White House staff members and reporters to find the sources of leaks. Henry has escaped all of that. Henry Kissinger is a war criminal. Never was a fan. And I'm a Nixon guy. Never liked Henry Kissinger.
And you did not like even though you helped get him elected in Florida, you were not a big fan of the Bush administration either.
I worked on the recount. I didn't work on the election, to be clear. And I had party duty to do. So this is a pretty short story. In 1980, I worked for Reagan. Reagan beat George H.W. Bush for the nomination. I had a decent relationship. Still have a good relationship with Jim Baker, who managed Bush's campaign, came over to become Reagan's chief of staff. I was running Tom Kaine's campaign for governor of New Jersey in 81. It was my first solo flight as a political consultant. It was a race we were supposed to lose. My polling shows were getting closer and closer and closer. I'm begging Reagan, through Baker, to please come to New Jersey and campaign for Tom Kaine. There's only two gubernatorial elections that year, Virginia and New Jersey. They say, we're going to win Virginia, you're going to lose New Jersey, just live with it. No, we're going to win New Jersey, you're going to lose Virginia. So finally, I go to Baker and I say, look, I'm going to try this one more time. Talk to Bob Teeter, our pollster. We're closing on, if Reagan comes there the final weekend, we will win. He says, I'll talk to the president, I'll let you know what he says. An hour later, Mike Deaver calls me, who was Reagan's body man, says, all right, the president's decided to go to New Jersey. If we lose Stone, it's your ass.
No pressure.
No pressure.
Yeah, I saw in the documentary when that recount was going on. You pulled some nice moves there.
Right. So Reagan goes to New Jersey. Kaine wins by 1,200 votes out of 2.2 million. It's a major accomplishment. But it's also a political debt. Now, Bush is in a recount. Jim Baker has his assistant call me, says, Mr. Baker wants you to go to Miami and see what the hell's going on. I'm going to say no, because that's not how politics works. I had a chit. I owed the guy. He came through for me. I had to come through for him. I have no great love for the Bushes, to be very clear. And I specifically said, look, the old man's not going to like this. We don't care what the old man likes. We want you have experience with recounts because of New Jersey. Mr. Baker wants you in Miami. Go to Miami now. And I did. And the rest is history. And
Tom
by the
Kaine
way,
was
this
a good
idea,
governor of New Jersey. He was
and
good.
by the way, this idea that I stopped a recount through the Brooks Brothers riot. No, I stopped them for recounting the same pile of ballots for the third time when they tried to take them in a back room in violation of the state's sunshine law. So this idea that Stone used bully tactics to stop a recount, that's BS too.
Speaking of Florida, a lot of people are excited about DeSantis. What are your thoughts?
I think his running is an act of treachery, in all honesty. He was running at 7%. If it were not for Donald Trump, he would never have become governor. He's 42 years old. He is now biting the hand that fed him. If it were not for Donald Trump, he would be he might be working in a McDonald's, but perhaps he could work his way up to manager. He'd be managing a McDonald's.
He's a Yale law. He's a congressman. I think
He's a
DeSantis
stiff.
would be all right.
He's a stiff. He's an unemployable
He's the
stiff.
Florida Fugazi.
He can't speak without notes. He can't speak on his feet. And his wife, that's not really her, as you will find out. You see the sweet Southern belle. What do you find out what she's really like?
What did you think personally about some of the stuff he did during like COVID and stuff like that?
His record on COVID is identical to Donald Trump's, except for he allowed us to be locked down and masked longer.
Trump can't run on COVID, man.
But either can DeSantis. I'm going to see the videos where he says it's safe and effective.
I got non-essential tattooed on me because I was a lockdown prisoner in the Soviet
Jersey.
Northeast. I came to the free state of Florida, and my life's been better than I can.
But
I could ever
nobody's
imagine.
suggesting that Trump is running on COVID. All I'm saying his record is identical to Ron DeSantis's. And if not, here's my challenge. Ron DeSantis should debate Robert Kennedy on COVID, and he will get destroyed because Ron DeSantis pushed the COVID idea, and only after the fact does he reinvent the facts. Yeah, he signed an executive order saying you didn't have to wear masks in the schools. Read the small print. The 6 largest counties in the state told him to go to hell, and 3.7 million children were masked going into 2022. That's why we call him the Florida Fugazi. His record is not different than Donald
Florida
Trump's.
Fugazi
Nice
is a
try.
little better than DeSanctimonious. I don't know.
He's got that other clown, the other mass Nazi that was on his staff,
David Kerner. You should be familiar with that guy. He's from your county. He and Ron had the COVID-19 compliance task force. These jackbooted thugs are going around terrorizing citizens. They set up a snitch line. So if you don't like the McGillicuddies across the street, you can phone in that they're not wearing their mask. But he's the head of your Department of Motor Vehicles now because he made an illegal deal to endorse Ron DeSantis before the election. The U.S. attorney, by the way, in the state needs to get active. Look at the $9.5 million that Ron took from Florida Power and Light, and look at these rate increases. Look at the tort reform bill that says if you don't like what your home insurance company's offering you because your home was destroyed, annihilated in the recent hurricane, and you have to accept pennies in the dollar, you can't sue them because Ron DeSantis took $4.5 million from the insurance industry.
Sure.
There's enough provable crimes there to send him away forever.
Now, we've talked about Hunter Biden, and we talked about Ron DeSantis. You mentioned Jared Kushner earlier. Jared Kushner, did he just get a $2 billion contract from Saudi Arabia?
I've read that, yes.
Contract from Saudi Arabia?
Yeah.
Jared Kushner, now it's hard to tell what's real and what's not because there is so much
I'm not
bias.
super familiar with Jared Kushner.
He's the president's son-in-law. Let's just say, I'm not going to badmouth him. Let's just say I'm not a fan.
Biden's son-in-law?
No, it's Donald Trump's.
Trump's
It's
President Trump's son-in-law.
Yeah, Ivana's husband, right?
Oh, okay,
Ivanka. I'm sorry, Ivanka's husband. And depending on who you believe, there have been reports that he was the loudest voice in the administration at times, and that
right.
he was.
I have heard. Okay.
So
I must say I have no firsthand knowledge of that, so I don't know it. Like you, I've heard it, I've read it, but I don't know it to be true.
So, one of the things that, again, now concerns me, and there's so much about Trump that I like, and there's so many concerns, like he seems to me to be like the king of the self-inflicted wound. Like there's nobody that gives their opponents a club to beat them with more than him. If he were to get the nomination and run again, there's no way Jared Kushner, with a $2 billion deal with Saudi Arabia the day he comes out, can be a part of this administration.
I agree. I don't think he would be. He's certainly not a part of the campaign. That I can tell you firsthand. So I would hope not.
Now, who from the last administration is going to be a part of this campaign? Because there's so many people have come and gone in the administration over time. It's kind of impossible to keep your. I assume, obviously, we know you. We know Michael Flynn, I assume.
Look, I don't. Trump doesn't think that way. The word Trump and plan never go in the same sentence. Okay, he's living for today, which is the way he should be. Right now, he has to focus on two huge contests. One, beating these bogus charges against him and winning re-election. Peter Navarro, somebody I'd expect to see back. For example, there's he had some very good appointments. He needed Bob Barr to be the Attorney General. He just picked the wrong bar. He had the wrong bar. So I think you're not going to see all these deep staters, though. I think you're not going to see all these Harvard, Yale pukes in key offices. Yeah. By the way, the fact that the governor's a Yale, Harvard graduate, those are disqualifications to be president.
I'm not a big fan of the Ivy League commie camps myself, but at the same time, that doesn't mean
I'm not a fan of my electric bill. I've used the same amount of electric since I moved here in August, but somehow my bill has gone up as the months go on.
Yeah, that's why he shouldn't be president. You moved here, right?
I did move here.
Okay, I'm just making sure.
Well, he's your governor. I mean, our governor. I voted for the guy too, unfortunately. I'm being railroaded. I'm getting railroaded by the NYPD and Ron DeSantis at the same time, paying money I don't have.
We'll get you a job, Sal. It'll be all right.
Not by Ron DeSantis, I'll tell you that. Florida Fugazi.
You got three people that you mentioned that maybe cross party lines. Is Trump open? You said RFK. I'm a big fan of Tulsi Gabbard as well. Is he open to doing some sort of bipartisan?
By the way, that's been the American tradition. John F. Kennedy, Secretary of the Treasury, C. Douglas Dillon, was a Republican from New Jersey. Franklin Roosevelt, Secretary of War, Frank Knox, was a Republican from Kansas.
Nixon.
It hasn't been that way in my lifetime.
Nixon had his Treasury Secretary John Connally, a Democrat from Texas.
Yeah.
So it has always been.
Well, perhaps I look at it, from a romanticized vision of being a kid, but what was it? The agreement for America between Clinton and Newt Gingrich. 100 days, 100 bills, and one's a Republican, one's a Democrat, and to me, those were the most prosperous times of my life.
Reagan too. Reagan was good with what's his name in the Senate.
I think Trump would return to the tradition of a bipartisan cabinet and have some Democrats in his cabinet.
That would be a massive play by him if he were to do that. If he were to come out and say that, that would be a massive
Obviously
play.
not AOC, but certain Democrats.
Would you date AOC?
No.
No?
No. She's from New York.
What does that mean?
I don't know. I mean, I was from New York, but I would avoid AOC at all costs.
Are you taking it down? You taking AOC down?
She's a good-looking woman.
She's
You taking it
crazy.
down?
She's crazy.
Huh?
Look what she did to my boy Alex Stein, making all those crazy allegations when he was just trying to make a joke out there.
Yeah, she seems like a tight ass.
Yeah.
Seems like she wouldn't be that fun.
I'd take her to an island in the Bahamas.
You'd what?
I'd take her to an island in the Bahamas.
That's real nice of you.
At least once. You never know. You gotta have an open mind, people. You gotta have an open mind. You don't have to keep going back. But I mean, What about you, Roger? I mean, you're a married man and a man of Christ. I don't want to.
Therefore, I don't answer hypothetical questions.
This has been absolutely incredible, man. We cannot thank you enough for your time. This was great. Sal, where can they find you, Sal? Where can they help you out, buddy?
Well, you go to my website, go to helpthisnycop.com. I will be holding not only NYPD accountable, but everyone's favorite mayor, Eric Adams, who's loyal to Joe Biden, may I add. You could find me on the Twitter at the Sal Greco, same as Instagram at the Sal Greco, on Truth Social at Head of the Table.
And if you want to know where the best piece of pizza is in South Florida, follow Sal Greco.
You got it
for
right here.
His world-class reviews. And, of course, the legend himself. Roger, where can they find you?
They can watch my daily show at stonezone.live. They can also go to stonezone.com to see everything I've written in my most recent videos. And while you're there, if you want to get your Roger Stone Did Nothing Wrong t-shirt, the t-shirt I was arrested in, or get any of my books, The Man Who Killed Kennedy, The Case Against LBJ, or...
You have audiobooks? We love audiobooks.
Audiobooks you have to go to Amazon for, but you can get signed copies of my books in the store. I also have my very own Roger Stones. That's a stone to which I have signed my name.
Nice.
It's like a paperweight. Whatever you do, don't throw these at anybody.
It's a paperweight.
Yeah, it's a paperweight. Like that's a belt buckle.
Yeah.
But stonezone.com. Subscribe. It's absolutely free. We just did an overhaul. It's looking very, very good. Then, as you mentioned, I have a new radio show every Sunday at 3 o'clock p.m. If you don't live in the greater New York, New Jersey, Connecticut area where we grew up, you can go to WABCradio.com and listen online. Get the WABC Radio app is a good way to do it.
That's awesome.
3 o'clock on Sundays, brand new. I had President Trump last week. I had David Schoen, the president's impeachment lawyer. This upcoming Sunday, I have General Michael Flynn. Check it out.
And after his next fight, you got to have Mickey Gall on, yeah?
Not a bad idea.
That's why we call him the wise man.
That's it. Guys, this has been one of our best episodes yet. For Christian in the back, Omri, our producers back home, and everybody else at Gas Digital, we thank you so much for checking us out here on this very special YouTube Live episode. That right there is Mickey Gall. I'm Gerard Michaels. This has been Slick and Thick. We will see you Friday at 1.